Hi, and welcome to another podcast with Hanaz Writers Limited. My name's Charlotte, and I'm a Year 2 teacher who's had experience working in a nursery for children aged 0 to 4 years old. If you haven't heard any of these podcasts before, then check out Hanaz Writers' YouTube and Spotify channels. In today's podcast, I'm going to be talking about Twitter, or as it's now called, X. So, X. When Twitter was first created, it was based on the idea of text messaging, but on a worldwide scale to update people about events and things that were happening around the world. In the past, before WhatsApp messaging era and all the different apps that you can use online, when mobile phones were first created, they invented the text message. Now, because the mobile phone could not hold a lot of storage due to its small amount of memory, whenever you wanted to send a text message, you were limited in the amount. So there was a limit for the amount of messages that you could send. Your phone could, say, only hold 100 messages at a time, and maybe even less, depending on what type of phone that you had. And this meant that once you reached about maybe 100 messages, you reached your limit, then you would not receive any more messages. And then a warning message would be texted to you. See the irony there? And this warning message would say you have no more space to hold any more messages. So then that means you have to go through all the messages you've got and delete the one that you didn't want anymore. And it was very long and tedious and annoying because you were like, oh, I have new messages that I just want to get to and I can't because I've still got too many old ones. It's like your photo storage being full. And I have to go through it and say, I delete some photos or videos, something I don't want anymore. And you have to like choose and pick and keep the ones that you do want and then delete the ones that you don't. So nowadays, you actually have the choice of unlimited text messages. Yay! And this also, you use WhatsApp and other internet-based messaging services. There might be like Line, maybe Slack. Just trying to think what else. I think there is WeChat as well. Any other kind of ones that you use, I can't think off the top of my head at the moment, but if you do use another one, you know what I mean. And this means that you can send text messages as many as you wanted, as long as you were connected to the internet and you had Wi-Fi and you had an internet connection and you had the WhatsApp, you have the application. If you didn't have the application, you could just download it and then you can be on your way. The other thing you also need to have is your friends or your family's mobile numbers. And without the mobile numbers, then you can't text anyone or you can't send any messages. And that's literally the only thing that stops you, I think. So, along with limited amounts of text messages in the past that you could send to someone, they also limited the amount of characters in a message. And by character, I mean every letter in the message. And this led to the creation of, I guess it's called the text message shorthand. So it's a particular shorthand because it's text message shorthand. And this is where the words and phrases cut down to fit into the limited amounts of characters that you were allowed in a text. So take this example for a moment and have a think. You may write the acronym TTYL, which means when you say it out loud, or you work it out, it says talk to you later. The shorthand TTYL was the first letter of each word, and that only took up 4 characters in your text message. Whereas if you wrote the whole phrase, talk to you later, this took up 17 characters. And yes, that even included the spaces in between. So the spaces in between each of the words were counted as a character as well. I know, right? That's just crazy. When I think about it now, I was like, wow, that was pretty stingy of them to make us pay for spaces in between the words as well as the character spaces of the letters for each word. So that means that we had to shorten words, we had to shrink them down. So because became cause, laughing out loud became LOL, rolling on the floor laughing became ROFL, ROFL. And then there's just so many other acronyms that were created. TTYL, talk to you later. CYA, CYA, late, L8. Literally just an 8, the number 8, L with the letter 8, which when you say it out loud, you sound it out late. Oh, yeah, okay, I'll be late. So that's fine. I'll be, B was just the letter B. You didn't even have BE. So the language and spelling rules that we needed to know about how to spell words went out the window. You literally just wrote words as they sounded, or you shortened it as much as you possibly could. Not was NT, maybe. That's the quickest way to write not, NT. So you ended up just shortening words, creating acronyms, and you use this in your text messages. And then the idea of this whole reason was just so you could send one message, and it saved you a lot of time and saved you from sending many, many messages at once. And you shorten down your words to send one message to your friend or your family, and it saves space on your mobile and it saves space on their mobile. And that's it, basically. And this has actually created an interesting development on language, because had this not been done before, this hadn't been done before. People were so used to speaking standard way. I think it's called the RP, received pronunciation. And it was a standard way of talking and writing, and you had to learn the correct spellings, you had to learn the correct pronunciation of words, you had to learn the correct grammar and punctuation, so that when you wrote a letter, you actually wrote it correctly. You wrote all the spellings correctly, you added the full stops, capital letters, da, da, da. And this was also a way for you to show where you came from. So unless you were born in a particular place in the UK, or even America, there were always people born in another place in the part of the world or in that country where they talked funny, or you thought they talked funny. And then it was assumed by the person who's speaking the proper way in the received pronunciation that everyone else were not as educated because they spoke with maybe a Cockney accent, or from Manchester or Liverpool, when they had, or Birmingham, and they had that particular thick accent. And then you just couldn't understand what they were saying sometimes. And people who were well off and they thought they knew everything, they thought that these kind of peoples were not brought up properly. They were not taught how to talk, how to read, how to write. And there was a reason that they just didn't think very highly of them. Back to the text messaging era, happened around when the mobiles were created, I think. And then after the mobiles were created, because text messaging was a relatively new thing. And they created mobile phones with the touchpad screen, or not touchpad screen, they had the screen on there. And you could type in the letters and the numbers to make your messages. I think it was around 1990, 95, 92, 93, up to 95, up to now even. And the shortened version of the words, now they become normal. They become the standard. People do still talk with received pronunciation for English, but those kind of people are dwindling. We don't see many of them anymore. So we're seeing more common, as we would say, common, not that everyone is common, but common folk, as they would like to say. People just writing quick shorthand, even in a message, maybe a letter to, say, the public services, a letter to, or an email even. Like lots of people just write emails. You write an email or a letter to the government, write to the local council, you write to your parliament MP, you write to different government officials. And sometimes some people, they forget they're writing to these kind of people, and they might slip in a few shortened words and a few shorthands, maybe. And it's perceived as a bit, you should be writing full proper words, not short words. So this is also one of the interesting things. When people talk as well, they could accidentally say things in a different way just because they think that's how you say it. They're so used to the shorthand, they're so used to the sounds of or reading shorthand words that they then end up saying it in their everyday speech, in their everyday language. So, circling back to Twitter, which is now called X. First of all, it was created as a social media website, and it was launched in 2006. So once you got an account, it was very much like text messages, where all your messages were made, but everyone could read it. Text messages were slightly different. They were really private. You could only send a message to one person, and then eventually you could send to a group of people, but only the people that you wanted to see your message. It wasn't really made public, especially if you're writing something about someone. And the only way it was made public was if that message was shown to other people, or if you yourself accidentally sent that message about someone to that person and then it was made public, when that's not always a great thing. Not a good thing at all. But as long as you were writing text messages, you were sending it to certain people. You weren't sending it to everyone. Now with X and Twitter and X, it became more public. So when you got onto the website, you created your own account and then you could send tweets. They were called tweets at the time. And you could send messages. I don't know what they're called on X, but you could write little short messages. And again, based on the text messaging feature, you only had a certain word limit. You only had a certain amount of words that you could use to put in your message. And the only way that you could then get people to read your message was if they followed you. You could make yourself publicly known to everyone, and people could just say, follow this person. And then whatever you write, whatever message you send, everybody can see it and everybody can read it. And it's there always and forever publicly there. So whatever you write, if you're using Twitter or you're using X, then be careful what you write. Because punctuation actually does matter, especially if people are reading things. And I think I in my previous podcasts, I talked about punctuation. It is important, especially with Twitter or X, then you definitely need to make sure that you've got the correct punctuation, because people can read things wrongly and they can take what you say a very different way, especially if you're adding exclamation marks in places or you're not adding a comma or a break or pauses. And also what you type, the word that you write. You could write a word wrong, and it has happened that you write words wrongly, or you write words the wrong way around, or you just write something silly. And then it's always there. People will always refer to it and say, oh, that one tweet that you made was about, and they will always pick up on that one. Because people always remember the things that went a bit wrong, or the things that are humorous and funny didn't go quite right. They never quite remember the good things or the right things that went right. So anyway, as long as you are part of the Twitter or the X community, and as long as other people are following you, they have to be following you, they can see your messages and they can see your information, they can see all about you. Whatever you put out there, they have access to it. Now, X, this kind of messaging service has been utilized by famous celebrities, singers, actors, actresses, musicians, artists, even clothing designers and food restaurants are getting in on it, and other famous names that you can think of. You name it, they just might have an account on X. And the website X is actually a great way to help them to get their thoughts and ideas across to you guys, their followers, or their fans, or people who hate them as well, people who are not really love to hate them. So these followers and fans of the famous celebrities, they want to know what's going on in their lives. They want to know what's happening, and they use X to read up on it. They want to see what's going on in their lives, where they're going, what they're doing. And X is one of those things which gave them the opportunity to do this. They could never do that before unless they saw what was happening through public media, through news reports, through newspapers, websites, even the fans' websites, especially if there's a famous like singing band or rock star band or whatever band. They definitely had their own website and they definitely post their own news and information up there. So X is quite nice that they can have this outlet to reach fans, talk to their followers, just give them general updates. That's actually quite a good thing for them because it boosts their popularity. People are seeing them outside of just being a singer or always going on tour, and they kind of see the human side to them. So X is quite nice for celebrities to get the word out about things like new albums, things that they'll be doing, where they're going to be touring, especially if they're going to be visiting a certain country. Then fans of that country can see it on their webpage and they see it on the X account and they can plan to go and see it or plan to get tickets for that particular show and so on and so on. X is actually still going quite strong now, even though its name has changed. It used to be Twitter, now it's X. People are still using it, they're still updating their accounts, and they're letting their followers know what's happening in their lives. And I think that's why it's one of those popular websites today. Well, that's all for this podcast. Thank you very much for listening. Let me know, what's your views on X? If you have an account, do you use it often? Do you know about the history of text messages and how X came about? Does X make our lives better or worse? Kind of a big question. So what do you think? Leave your comments below. If you've enjoyed this podcast and you'd like to subscribe, then click the subscribe button below. You can hear more podcasts with Hanaz Writers on their YouTube and Spotify channels. You can also follow Hanaz Writers on Instagram, Facebook, and X. And they have the handle at @hanaz.writers. So thank you for listening again, and until next time, bye.